Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Justice for All, Effective Administration of the Criminal Justice Training and Technical Assistance Program, this FY19 competitive announcement, sponsored by the Bureau of Justice Assistance. At this time, I would like to introduce you to today's presenters, Rebecca Rose, Senior Policy Advisor, and Priya Sarathy Jones, Policy Advisor with the Bureau of Justice Assistance.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Priya Sarathy Jones. I'm Policy Advisor at BJA, who oversees the Sixth Amendment work, Category 2 of this solicitation. Today's agenda is laid out on the screen. We're going to go just as a quick overview over the Justice for All Reauthorization Act that allows us to solicit for these two competitive categories of training and technical assistance. Then my colleague Becky Rose will go over Category 1 and the requirements and information related to that. I will then go into depth over Category 2, and then we will cover the general application materials as well as other information generally applicable to the solicitation, and then get into any questions that you all may have of us regarding the solicitation. Okay, so the Justice for All Reauthorization Act of 2016 is where BJA gets the authorization to solicit for these two particular categories in the solicitation. So 42 U.S.C. 3752 lists out two areas. B1 is the strategic planning section, and that covers Becky's category of soliciting for training and technical assistance to states and local governments that are requesting support to develop and implement the strategic plans required under subsection A6. This is specifically for the strategic planning and implementation of JAG funds. And then we have B2, which is the protection of the constitutional rights. Under this section, we are given the authorization and authority to solicit for training and technical assistance to states and local governments and any agents within those states and local governments that have the responsibility for the administration of justice to help meet their obligations under the Sixth Amendment of the United States Constitution. And the two areas where we can provide assistance here are public dissemination of practices, we'll cover that, and adopting and implementing a system for the administration of justice consistent with the requirements of the Sixth Amendment. So there we can help states come up with, states and local jurisdictions with their plans of how they may want to address specific issues covered under the Sixth Amendment to meet those obligations. Eligibility under this solicitation are covered in the solicitation, but are listed on the screens as well. Any national nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations, or institutions of higher learning that has an expertise and experience in managing these provisions of training and technical assistance for evidence-based criminal justice programs, so specific expertise in both areas. They must show the capacity to provide technical expertise in implementing action research partnerships between criminal justice researchers and practitioners. And all the recipients and sub-recipients must forego any profit or management fee that they may be entitled to otherwise if they receive funding from this particular solicitation. BJA welcomes applications that involve two or more entities that would carry out the award. You are free to partner with as many entities that you think are necessary to competitively address these issues. However, there has to be a lead applicant, and also there can only be one lead applicant. You also are eligible to compete in both categories, Category 1 and Category 2, so that it's not considered two applications then. This is two categories under which you can apply for either or both. And any others must be, anybody besides the lead applicant must be listed as a sub-recipient as a partner, so you can decide for yourself who will be sort of the fiscal agent and the lead applicant on this application, but list any other proposed entities under your sub-recipients. The applicant must be the entity that would have primary responsibility for carrying out the award. including administering the funding and managing the entire training and technical assistance program. So the lead applicant will be the one that takes on the fiscal responsibility for managing the grant and the technical aspects of the grant, but also for all of the deliverables and obligations that are taken under the TTA award as well. These are cooperative agreements, so they'll be managed between BJA and the applicant. Under this solicitation, only one application by any particular applicant can be considered, but they can be proposed as sub-recipients in multiple applications. And once again, that's per category, so you can come in and apply for funding under Category 1 and as a lead applicant under Category 2. Now I'll pass it over to my colleague, Rebecca Rose, who will go over the solicitation overview and then get into Category 1 requirements.
Great, thank you, Priya, and hi, everyone. As Priya mentioned, I'm Rebecca Rose, a policy advisor here at BJA, and oversee with Priya the solicitation, in particular the Category 1 work. So just as a reminder, as what Priya just went over, the JFARA created a mandatory carve-out of the Justice Assistance Grant, otherwise known as JAG, that will be used to provide training and technical assistance to states and local governments under these two areas. And these two areas align with the categories that you're seeing in the solicitation. So number one is to support the development and implementation of the required strategic plans to assist policymakers with the allocation of JAG resources. And then number two, to support and meet the obligations established by the Sixth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. So I'm going to go over Category 1. And then I'll turn it back over to Priya to talk a little bit about Category 2. So Category 1, we're calling the Statewide Strategic Planning, Training, and Technical Assistance. Under this category, we are seeking a training and technical assistance provider to support the strategic planning services to policymakers at the state level, primarily in order to support their strategic planning efforts as required by JAG. So the intended recipients of this TTA services would include state-level policymakers, criminal justice advisors to governors, and state administering agencies, and obviously within those states, those stakeholders that they would bring to the table to develop their strategic plans. The provider should have demonstrated experience in delivering and managing a national-level TTA program, because the provider will be expected to work with all states on their strategic planning TTA services, but then have particular knowledge of state-level policymakers and criminal justice advisors to governors. So understanding the roles and responsibilities of those state-level policymakers. And in particular, the applicant should have demonstrated experience in working with SAAs, again, the state administering agencies, and or just an understanding of how the SAAs operate, including how JAG funds are managed at the state level, the organizational structure of the SAAs, the culture, and the environment. Now, the objectives pretty much touched on, but just to highlight what these are specifically listed in the solicitation, the objectives of Category 1 are to support the enhancement and development of statewide strategic plans, to provide resources and assistance to enhance the state and local jurisdictions' capacity to meet the actual specific JAG strategic planning requirement. And then number two is to share strategic planning resources, information, and practices with stakeholders in the field. So as a natural kind of byproduct of working with the states on developing their strategic plans, we expect that there will be a lot of resources that come out that will help the field in general around developing strategic plans. Now, if you look at pages 6 and 8 in the solicitation, it goes over very specifically the deliverables that we anticipate that this cooperative agreement, this provider would be working on. Obviously, as Priya mentioned, this is a cooperative agreement, and you'll be working very closely with BJA on the deliverables and expectations of the award. But we've outlined in detail what we expect right now, the key deliverables to be. So there's a lot of detail in the solicitation, again, on pages 6 to 8 for Category 1. But basically, for a very high-level overview, we would hope that our expected provider would be able to assess needs of the state partners that they're working with. What are their needs to help inform their strategic planning process? We expect there to be both on-site and off-site assistance for TTA providers that we work with through BJ, and this will be the case for this project, you know, the expectation is that there will be, you know, times that you'll need to go on site to work very closely with the state leaders, but also be able to be a resource for folks to, you know, pick up the phone and call and ask questions, or provide, you know, webinars and, you know, resources on the website. So that kind of, that's how what we mean by on-site and off-site assistance. There's an expectation that the provider will have the ability to gather and work with a variety of subject matter experts and peers to support the TTA project. So every state, although there is a requirement for strategic planning, as we, you know, many of us know, we've been through a strategic planning process. The states are going to prioritize different issues based on what the greatest needs are in those states. And so we expect the TTA providers to be able to, you know, pull on different resources to be able to respond to those varying needs of the states in developing their strategic plan. It could be by topic area, you know, in terms of what their key focus is, or particular people or different stakeholders that they work with in the criminal justice system. And then a communications platform to share information. So this kind of is in line with what I mentioned under Objective 2, which is we expect there to be a lot of resources that are available through the TTA project that, you know, that the states can easily access, you know, through some sort of online website or resource center, and then others in the field, in the criminal justice field, will be able to access as well. Now I'll turn it back over to Priya to give us a high-level overview of the Sixth Amendment TTA. Priya?
Thanks, Becky. So Category 2 is our shorthand is the Sixth Amendment TTA. This is our training and technical assistance that is targeted towards states and local jurisdictions to help meet their obligations under the Sixth Amendment. So we are focused on assisting state and local governments, courts, judicial officers, defense leaders, to enhance the capacity to uphold the Sixth Amendment obligations, and this can be done through strategic planning and training, support assessments or adoption and implementation of improved program practices in support of securing their Sixth Amendment rights, and also to share resources and best practices, knowledge with the jurisdictions in their efforts to meet their Sixth Amendment obligations. So under this particular award, we're looking to get at state and local jurisdictions' ability to identify and address their any issues they may be having with meeting their obligations under the Sixth Amendment, and then help them through their training and strategic planning, or doing more of a statewide or jurisdictional assessment of their practices to address their particular and individual needs, but simultaneously sharing resources and knowledge and disseminating best practices to the field, but also to the particular sites and jurisdictions that the training and technical assistance providers are working with. The applicants under Category 2 have to have the capacity to deliver national training and technical assistance to both urban and rural jurisdictions, to take over the administration and development of a national platform. In this case, it's actually a website, so they will have to take over managing the website that is being created under the current Training and Technical Assistance Awards, and share best practices and materials through that particular website. So it is both maintenance and development of that. They need to be able to work with various stakeholders across the criminal justice system. A lot of these sites and local jurisdictions have various players that are part of meeting these obligations. You have the courts, you have judges, you have prosecutors, you have defense attorneys, you have court administrators, all at the table trying to address various aspects of the Sixth Amendment, and the training and technical assistance provider or team of providers needs to have the ability to work across these various stakeholder groups and understand their unique positions as well as the collective aspects of that. And they have to have the applicant has to have the ability to administer a national level convening on these topics with the department. So the deliverables are listed on pages 8 and 9 of the solicitation. Sorry, someone just changed it. Okay, on page 8 and 9 of the solicitation, in much greater detail, but I'm highlighting some of the specific ones here, which are provide on-demand training and technical assistance, including assessments. This, similar to what Becky said, this is both on-site and off-site training and technical assistance, and that the type of training and technical assistance is point 2 needs to be customized to the jurisdiction's particular needs and the problems that they are trying to address. Each one will be different, and the applicant needs to be able to work with each jurisdiction in order to provide them with the specific type of assistance that they are looking for. There's an expectation that be able to manage the travel and logistical requirements that are necessary in order to provide that type of customizable engagement over the course of 3 years. Depending on the type of work, the type of projects that come on underneath the Sixth Amendment, we would anticipate anywhere from 4 to 8 jurisdictions that will receive that type of intensive commitment from the training and technical assistance provider. In addition, the applicant would need to be able to develop and disseminate various publications, articles, webinars, materials, guides, any type of information exchange that would be helpful to the field in this topic area, as well as to the particular jurisdictions that will be worked with directly under the site, with the sites. A TTA provider would also have to plan to conduct a national or several regional meetings on this topic, and that could be conventions or convenings, educational sessions, so there's an opportunity to develop those with partnership with BJA on what would be most useful for the organizations. And these convenings and or meetings would once again involve partners and stakeholders from across the criminal justice system. And also develop and maintain these online resources, as indicated before, on the website to make them available to anybody who's looking for resources and information on how to meet their obligations under the Sixth Amendment. You will be able to go to, if you go to the BJA's website, we have a BJA website specifically dedicated to the Sixth Amendment. There you can go and see the training and technical assistance that we currently offer under this authorization, the locations where we are offering them, strategic planning sites, our current assessment sites, and see the process that we're currently under with our funding that's out there. And see what gaps are in the field or what areas we may want to cover. In addition, you need to be able to work with the current team of training and technical assistance providers to complement the work that is already out there and ensure no duplication of efforts in this area. Now I'm going to pass it back to my colleague Becky, and she will go over tips for applying for the solicitation.
Great, thank you, Priya. And just a reminder, as folks have questions, we'll take them in a minute. We just have a few more slides to go over with some tips and other resources. But as folks have questions, if you have them now, don't hesitate to type them in the Q&A box. I see one question so far, but go ahead and type them in the Q&A box, so we will open it up for questions in just after a few more slides. So thanks, Priya. So we're just talking right now about just a couple tips for applying. I mean, these are just things that we want to highlight. This is all listed in the solicitation, but some things we want to highlight to make sure that you pay special attention to. You know, applicants must register and submit applications through grants.gov. If you haven't been through the grants.gov registration process, take a look now, get yourself all set up. It can take several weeks for first-time registrants. Applicants must also comply with all applicable, what we call SAM and DUNS requirements. It's a System for Award Management, SAM, and Unique Entity Identifier Data Universal Numbering System, DUNS requirements. This is all explained on page 28 in the solicitation, so definitely take a look at that. But those are, in addition to registering through grants.gov, those are other things you need to have in place. So if you are a first-time registrant or haven't registered haven't applied, since last year, please take a look to make sure that's all updated before you apply for this solicitation or any other OJP solicitations as well. We always encourage you all to submit your applications at least 72 hours prior to the application due date. I know this doesn't always happen in reality. I've been on the other side where we're applying for grants and it just always happens. As much planning as you can do, it always happens to come to the last minute. But, you know, as much as you can, try to submit things early so that you guys don't encounter any problems when you're submitting applications. Just keep in mind some of the things that we've gone over. So Priya mentioned the eligibility requirements. You must be submitted by an eligible type of applicant. That's Priya went over it, so you'll have this in the slides, but it's also very detailed on the cover page of the solicitation. The application must request funding within the programmatic funding restraints. And so you'll see in the solicitation there's the section B on page 10 is the federal award information. And just to read that to you, BJA expects to make at least 2 awards for a minimum of $5 million in total funds for the solicitation. So in category 1, we would expect to make 1 award up to or exceeding $2.5 million for a 36-month project period. And then category 2, BJA expects to make 1 award up to or exceeding 2.5 for a 36-month project period. So just keep that in mind when you're pulling together your budget. The application must be responsive to the scope of solicitation. So while Priya mentioned that you can, as an organization or entity apply to both of the categories, but just keep in mind the different requirements. It does require different types of expertise to respond to the scope of the solicitation and the scope of the TTA that is planned to be provided. So keep that in mind for each category, and especially if you're planning to apply for each category. And then the application must include all items designated as critical elements. So there's a couple resources in the solicitation that I just wanted to point out for the list of the critical elements. Go see what an application should include under section D, which is the application and submission information. This starts on page 13. Another really good resource for you is Appendix A, which is the application checklist. So this is just a great kind of short, hey, I can check off to see if I have all the sections that are required for you to do before you submit your final application. And then just a quick touch on the performance measures requirement. As applicants to OJP awards, you aren't required to submit performance data with the application. The performance measure information is included just as a heads up that if you are successful, you'll be required to submit performance data as part of your reporting requirements under an award. So the application should demonstrate your ability to understand the performance data reporting requirements for this grant program and detail how the applicant would gather the required data should it receive funding. So you don't need to respond at all to the performance metrics that are listed in there, but you need to at least reference and show that you are aware of them and would be able to meet the requirements to report on them. If you look at page 16 details this out, what I just said, and gives you guidance on how that should be explained in your application. But also Appendix D just lists all of the performance metrics that we have for all TTA providers. If you see things on there that don't necessarily align with the deliverables that we've identified under the category, that's okay. This is just a chart that lists all of the metrics or measures that we have for TTA providers, for the BJA TTA providers as a whole. And once awarded, we would work with you individually to identify which measures you would need to respond to. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mary Jo just to give us, we'll take Q&A in a few minutes, but just to give us a quick highlight of some of the other resources that you have available to you all as you prepare your applications. Mary Jo?
Thank you so much, Rebecca. So right now on slide, you can see that the solicitation due date, the link to the solicitation, and a reminder that the transcripts and slide and recording will be posted to the BJA website for this webinar. I'm going to go over the resources as Rebecca noted, and I'll give you some time to submit some questions. BJA is always wants to keep you in the loop of what they're doing, so please feel free to follow them on social media. They are on Facebook, Twitter, and they have an RSS feed. You can find that information on the slide. The other thing to note, if you do have questions after the webinar that come up, please submit them to the National Criminal Justice Reference Service, and you can do that at grants@ncjrs.gov. That information is on the slide here. It is also included in the solicitation. NCJRS also offers a weekly email that's sent out regarding funding opportunities from the agencies within the Office of Justice Programs. That comes out every Friday, and you can subscribe to that newsletter by going to ncjrs.gov. They also offer a chat feature and a toll-free number. So again, if you have any questions pertaining to the solicitation, you can reach out to them, and they will work with Rebecca and Priya to get you the answers that you need. In addition, any problems that you have submitting your application and technical issues, you can contact grants.gov. They are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, except on federal holidays. Their information is listed here as well. If you have general questions about submitting an application or the processes that you need to go through, setting up DUNS numbers and so forth, please refer back to the BJA Grant Applicant Education Series, and you can locate that on the BJA website. The URL is listed here. An easy way to get to it is go to the BJA website, go to their funding page, and you'll find a link there. There were 4 webinars that occurred earlier this year, each one of them pertaining to a different aspect about the application process. We also have some links in the slide for other resources that might be helpful, including the Office of Justice Programs Funding Resource Center and the DOJ Financial Guide. That information is here. These slides will be made available, so you will be able to access those URLs, but I'll also leave the slide up as we go through questions so that you can write that down. So at this time, I'm going to turn the questions over to Priya and Rebecca. There is one question regarding Category 2.
So go ahead, Priya. You get that.
Okay, so the question is, are grantees or attendees at the regional and national training would be expected to pay for their own travel? I think there'll be the opportunities through budgets and, once the applicant is funded, to talk about how much funding could go to bringing participants to the convening when they get to planning the national convening. So I think that's something that can be worked out after, but there would be some funds that could be used to do that.
All right. So just a reminder, we've got you guys have the opportunity to ask questions. You type it in the Q&A box. That you would, if you don't have that pulled up, you would hover over the PowerPoint presentation. You'll see a little conversation box that you can select that says chat, and then you can type your question in Q&A. And just want to confirm, Michelle or Mary Jo, you guys haven't received any questions directly to you guys, to your chats?
That is correct. There is nothing in chat or Q&A at this time. Please take the opportunity to ask Priya and Rebecca. You have their undivided attention. Now's a great time to get those questions answered. We can, at this time, kind of page through the resources that I mentioned earlier as we wait to see if anybody has anything else. Right now is the education series is showing. That URL is listed at the bottom. It is https://www.bja.gov/funding/webinars.html. It's a really great resource, and I highly recommend that you review some of those webinars. Now showing on the slide is the information for NCJRS, so I will leave that here, and you can jot their email addresses down as well as their web chat URL if you like. They are open 10 to 6 Eastern Time, Monday through Friday.
So I think we're not seeing any more questions, and just want to check in, Priya, if there's anything else you want to say before we wrap up.
Oh, no, I'm good. Thanks for your participation. And, you know, I think there's contact information if anyone has questions after that we can answer. There's information that NCJRS can answer, and we'll, if there are any updates or anything that is of a larger scale, we'll share them with the larger audience.
Great, and I just wanted to add, we just got an alert that grants.gov is going to be out for a few hours this weekend. Obviously, we have a lot of lead time. The solicitation isn't closing until May 14th, so hopefully it won't impact you, but if you are planning to work on grants.gov this weekend on this solicitation or any other solicitation, we got an alert that it will be closed for a couple hours, and the announcement is on grants.gov, so you can check it out, and they'll update that regularly. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that. And then, again, as a reminder, the solicitation is due May 14th by 11:59 p.m. Eastern, and we look forward to hopefully getting some applications from you all. Mary Jo, anything else to wrap up?
Nope, that is all. I would just thank everybody for joining us today. Have a great day.